Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'll be creating another fun fold gift card holder. I just thought that the hippos would be perfect for this card, and it could be used for a masculine birthday or Father's Day, which is coming up. The products that I used are Hippo Beach Fun, the Build an Island die set, and I just used the palm trees for this card. I showed the brushed stripes background stamp, but I ended up not using it, but I did use the swirls background stamp. To create this card, you'll need a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 8 1/4, another piece of cardstock that measures 3 1/4 by 8 1/2, another piece of cardstock that measures 4 by 5 1/4, another piece of cardstock for the little gift card pocket that measures 3 1/2 by 4. You'll need 2 pieces of cardstock that measures 4 by 3. And finally, you'll need one more piece of cardstock that measures 2 1/2 by 4 inches. We'll start out by doing all of the scoring that you need to do for this card. So you're going to take the piece that's 4 1/4 by 8 1/4, and you'll score that at 5 1/2 inches. The next piece is the 3 1/4 by 8 1/2, and you're going to score that piece at 4 1/4 inches and just fold that in half as well. The next piece is the piece that's 3 1/2 by 4 inches, and this is going to be for the little gift card pocket. With the 4-inch edge up at the top of the scoreboard, you'll score at a 1/2 inch, 3 1/2 inches, and then rotate your cardstock 90 degrees and score again at 1/2 inch. Once you have those score lines burnished, you'll want to cut out the corners where the score lines intersect. And then I like to cut a little bit of an angle off the one side there. That just helps make this lay a little bit more flat inside the card itself. Next, I inked up the swirl background stamp with some turquoise ink, and I prefer to have my stamp face up on my work surface. That way I can place my cardstock right on top of the stamp. And then I placed a piece of scratch paper on top and rubbed over the top to make sure that I got a nice clean impression. I used the same stamp for the little strip that measures 2 1/2 by 4 inches, and I did the same thing by inking the stamp up first. Next, I ran the palm trees through my die cut machine with a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock. And here I'm kind of making sure that the top of that one palm tree doesn't go too far above that piece of cardstock that measures 3 inches by 4 inches. If it goes up too high, when you go to open that front flap, it'll bend the top of the palm tree. So to make sure that I had it in just the right spot, I used a little bit of temporary adhesive just to hold it in place, and then I used my scissors to cut off the excess pieces. I wanted to add a little bit of color on the bottom of my die cut piece here for my sandy beach. I'll also be using the Whimsy Stamps shaker sand to add even more texture. But because the sand is so light, I did want to have a little bit of color underneath, so I just did very basic coloring with a couple of Copic markers. And once I had my base layer colored, I used 2 more yellowish colors and just did a whole bunch of dots on the bottom just to add a little bit of texture. I did most of the coloring off camera, but I'll make sure to have all of the Copics that I used listed down in the description box below for you. I'll also have all of the measurements and where to score for the actual card pieces as well in the description box for you. Anyway, moving right along. In order to get the sand to stick really well, I pulled out a piece of double-sided adhesive, and I used a pencil just to kind of trace the line that I would need to cover my little sandy beach. Once I had that adhered to my sandy beach, I removed the release paper from the sandy beach, and then I pulled in the shaker sand and I poured that right on top of this double-sided adhesive. This double-sided adhesive is really strong, so I knew that it would hold the sand very well. After I had poured it over that adhesive, I made sure to press it into the adhesive and burnished it a little bit to make sure that it stuck really well. After I had the first layer of sand down there, I wanted to have some more chunky sand, So I used my Nouveau Crystal Glaze and added a few dollops and then spread it around with my finger. Then I just brushed the leftover sand on my scratch paper over the top of it and tapped it down to make sure that it was going to stick to the Nouveau Glaze. Then I set that piece aside to dry. While that was drying, I did a little bit of ink blending and I used Minted Suede Shoes and Oh Boy. And now it's time to put this card together. So I'm going to start with the little flap that goes on the front. And on the inside, I adhered the little gift card holder. I almost adhered it, but then I remembered that I wanted to punch a little notch. So I did that really quick and then adhered that on the inside. I took the other piece of cardstock that measures 3 by 4 and adhered that on the top flap of the orange piece. So this piece is going to be the flap that opens up on the front of the card. Next, I worked on my card base and I adhered my stamped background to the front of this card base. And when you do this, you want to make sure that the fold actually folds down because that's the bottom of the card. Next, I took the piece of cardstock that's 2.5 by 4 inches, which I had also stamped with the Curly Cues background stamp. I've been calling it the swirls, and that's wrong. It's actually called Curly Cues. And adhered that to the bottom flap and set that aside. Next, it was time to adhere my palm trees and sandy beach to the front of my ink blended panel. For this, I decided to use liquid glue so that I would have just a tiny little bit of wiggle room if I needed it. Once that was adhered in place, I used my tape runner to adhere this piece to the front of the little orange piece. And then I opened it up and put some adhesive on the back of that and adhered that to the front of the card panel. The last step was to add my hippo. I added foam tape on the top part of him and then I used liquid glue on the bottom to make sure that he stuck to that sand really well. This is one more look at how that card opens, and then the final step was to add some shine to his sunglasses. So again, I used my Crystal Nouveau Glaze and just did a light layer over the lenses on his sunglasses, and that's it. That finishes up my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.